Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast, home of the Fantasy NASCAR Spreadsheet. Get it at Race4thePrize.com. $20 for the February package. Or save some money on the season. Drop the $250 now. Donate to my family. It all goes to a good cause. You're supporting a good kid, good wife. Throw it my way and I'll share all the sheets. Save you a bunch of time. Again, anyone can make a spreadsheet. Anyone can scrape data. But do you want to spend 5-10 hours a week doing that? Anybody can make a pizza. But you order a pizza, so order my pizza. Today we continue to talk about the Xfinity Series. During our homework, this is the second session of that. Check out video number 1. Might be tangential at times. We may get off track because I am exploring and doing the research just like you, trying to get up to speed. This is not a scripted podcast. It's more exploratory. We finished with Josh Williams last week. Now we are going in order of car numbers. And we have the Bobby Daughter SS Greenlight entry, Garrett Smithley, 25thly once upon a time. Remember back in the JD Motorsports days, you could set your watch, him finishing around 25th. And he may be back up to that now if he can consistently get a full-time ride. Not super excited, but always someone that we kind of consider going back to 2018. And if he's going to be in the same ride every week, we can feel a little bit more confident with Smithley, but there's not much else you need to say. Unless we want to talk about his iRacing days during COVID, I don't think we need to explore that, watching Smithley Twitch streams. Nonetheless, not someone you can completely factor out. The Bobby Daughter cars are nowhere near as fast as they once were, but if we can get some consistency and get a driver full-time in one of these rides, which never seems to happen as sponsorship comes and goes, but Smithley, a bit of a hustler, could possibly have consistent sponsorship. If he's in the car every week, then maybe he is somebody we can lean on. Because we've seen that with our consistent value picks like Poole, and I don't know if I want to go as far as to say Ryan Ellis, but definitely Poole, I think, is someone that we put in that conversation. Because if you look last year at how many times a value play hit, Brendan Poole, 24 times in his 33 races, he was a top 20 DFS performer under $7,000. And that's because he consistently had that Alpha Prime / TJM, Tommy Joe Martin's ride. And we see that really across the board with the value picks. If you have the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, the drivers that were consistently in the ride every week, obviously, were some of our best value performers. And the guys that often busted were guys getting a one-time, two-time ride. And so that's about all we need to say about Smithley. How about Harrison Burton? We don't have a link for Danny Elflin because Danny Elflin is going to be a new crew chief for Kevin Szewinski / Tim Self. This team has expanded. Szewinski, been a part of all the series, more in the ARCA Racing series over the last couple years, but now expanded with Tim Self, who also expanded out of the truck series after his son kind of moved out. He did still and does still field some truck teams, but they've combined forces and trying to put together the solid 25 car. And the early records, it was really more, I don't know how much Self was involved in the early entries a couple years ago, but nonetheless, when Moffitt was in this ride, they were performing pretty well. And then Deegan came up, and there were expectations highly placed on her based on one good race in the Xfinity Series. So that was a bit of a mistake. And she struggled for a year, and halfway through, they parted ways and had various Ford drivers jump in last season, and even the best of the best Cup Series drivers jumping into this car really couldn't get too much out of it. Now Harrison Burton's going to be in. Danny Elflin, a new crew chief, is going to jump in. Let me see if I have any notes on Danny Elflin. I might have something interesting to say about him. No, I don't got anything on Elflin. Brand new guy. Not much of a story to tell there. So a lot of questions. Burton does bring sponsorship with him, or at least connections. Obviously, this team's going to perform better than it did with Deegan. I don't think that's a stretch of the imagination. And I think you could argue it's probably going to be just as good with Moffitt or better. Now, the only argument against that is maybe Moffitt knew the equipment that he had and was more conservative in his approach, whereas Burton could be more aggressive and really trying to push to prove to either get back into the Cup Series or to land a better ride in the Xfinity Series or possibly even the Truck Series, which I don't think is a bad thing. Either way, if he can upgrade his equipment and chase wins and championships, that's going to be the goal. And he may feel like he needs to impress, and if he feels like he needs to impress and is driving a car that's in duress, then he could quite possibly perform worse than Brett Moffitt did in this vehicle. And again, we don't know what the talents of Danny Elfman as crew chief have in store for us. I mean, I'm thinking money's coming. I'm thinking good people are coming. Should be an upgrade over crew chief. Ryan London never really was anything special, so we'll see how Burton plays out. Something to keep our eye on. Moving on to Eckes, now jumping into the colored car of 16. Alex Yance will be his crew chief. Let's just take a peek at what Yance has done over the seasons. He's worked with the various Cullig drivers. Not a bad crew chief. I wouldn't really argue if he was a good crew chief. You can see him doing a lot of different work with the different drivers, coming from the Cup Series down of Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain. Then did a full year with Justin Haley and really put together some solid performances with Haley that year. But that was a 2020 year, weird year. You may just want to completely write that one off. 2021, also, again, kind of a strange year without practice. So, maybe one of the themes that we always talked about back then was not practicing and guessing a setup before going in played to some of the team's strengths and then really hurt some teams that we expected to do better. And so when you look at those stats, especially from the crew chief lens, tough to really evaluate 2020-21 based on the format of racing. 2022, not terrible with Daniel Hemrick, routinely getting top 10s. And we did see Cullig really take some steps forward in speed and maybe not did not dethrone JGR and Junior Motorsports, but really we're starting to impress. Then there was the Castle year, some Castle work. I guess he didn't do a full season with Castle. Then again, some part-time ride work when Kyle Busch was trying to help out with the program. Look at 2023 again, doing more part-time work last year. And then it looks like for the stretch run, jumping in with Daniel Hemrick. And 2024, last year, looks like it was Yance back with AJ Allmendinger. The Allmendingers run. Pretty good season for AJ. Got a win at Las Vegas. Pretty similar, decent numbers. Not bad. My biggest question mark is not on Yance. The biggest question mark is on Eckes. And it goes back to the theme that I talked about in the previous podcast, that I like late model guys getting in Xfinity cars. I think there's more similarity in driving. I like Truck Series drivers going to the Cup Series. I think there's more similarities in the racing packages. We have seen star Truck Series drivers not necessarily take a strong developmental leap going from trucks to Xfinity because the stock cars are just completely different. We could absolutely see Eckes struggle, and Eckes has not gotten any real experience outside of the Truck Series. And you look at a guy like Daniel Dye, who talked about in the first series of this podcast. Dye had a handful of Xfinity races last year. That's not the case with Christian Eckes. He's a talented young driver, and when he has good equipment, he definitely has proven himself. Very solid with McAnally over the last couple seasons. Probably could have been a star with Kyle Busch Motorsports, but as we know, we can see that team was really just not in the greatest shape towards the end. And I would argue that organizationally, I don't know how well that thing was run. Yeah, they got a bunch of wins because Kyle Busch was an all-star. And they had superstar crew chiefs at times. But really, outside of the superstar crew chief and Kyle Busch, or an elite driver in one of those trucks, there was a lot of disappointment in that KBM program. So when Eckes didn't really perform, not really that surprised. And to see Eckes with McAnally, who clearly had probably the most speed in Truck Series, he performed strongly over the last few years. Well, he's not going to be in the best equipment. He's going to be in good equipment. There's going to be a lot of changes. Not super excited. We'll see, though, because we have seen drivers jumping in their first year into a colored car and do pretty well, but not be elite. Moving on to our other, well, now we're going to get into some of the JGR guys. And a lot of these crew chiefs are unknown at the moment, which is surprising, shocking, I would imagine. Look, so we look at 18, 19, and 20. We know Sawalich is going to be in 18 full-time. We know Brandon Jones and his big money from Ream is going to be in the 20. The 19 is going to be an all-star ride at times. We know that Justin Bonsignor, your wheeling modified legend, he's going to get 5 races. Kind of sounds like the Ryan Preece story, doesn't it? When he mortgaged his house. We're going to have to listen to that story from Ryan Preece's lover boy, Mike Joy. But the modified guy's going to get 5 races. But we don't know who the crew chiefs are going to be. We do know that last year with Creed in the 18, it was Sam McCauley, a new crew chief at JGR. The 19 was Seth Chavka, who really didn't have any much experience either, a new guy. And the 20 was Tyler Allen. And Tyler Allen was really good, new guy, probably the best of the 3. I can't imagine that Tyler Allen is going to be matched up with Brandon Jones. But if Brandon Jones has a big enough paycheck, then that might be the way to go. And I don't really think that I'm that big on Sawalich, who was okay in the truck series last year. Again, that might not matter. But again, if we're looking at how cars compare, trucks and ARCA probably similar. And Sawalich did well in the ARCA series. Now, he also had a huge competitive advantage driving those Toyotas, being part of the JGR family. And we have seen the divide there in that series, unless you're Connor Zilich and you can steal some wins. There's a couple guys who steal a win here or there in the ARCA series, but when it comes to leading laps and staying out front the entire time, you're going to need that JGR affiliation. And it's not even close. We've seen plenty of ARCA heroes come through, and once they lose that giant competitive advantage and go to the Truck Series or the Xfinity Series, not be as dominant as a force. So we'll see what Sawalich has this year. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, a JGR car. Now, Sheldon Creed never really could get this thing going, and I'm not even going to debate whether Creed is better than Sawalich. Creed is a good race car driver and is much better than Sawalich. Maybe someone out there who is a Bill Sandwich fan, maybe that's what we'll start calling him. But other than Bill Sandwich fans, we know what Sheldon Creed's capable of. I mean, he's a Truck Series champion. He's won at every type of racetrack. Yeah, does he fail at times and make silly mistakes? Absolutely. Does it kill you in DFS? Absolutely. But you've seen him race. You know what he is capable of. We really haven't seen Bill Sandwich do too much. And he had plenty of opportunities in the Truck Series last year and pretty solid tri-car equipment. Again, we don't know who the crew chiefs are going to be. You can check out the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet to explore these links, or you can just search around online, do the work yourself, gather up all this stuff yourself, scrape the data yourself, spend your Friday nights watching live internet feeds and scraping practice data. Or you can go to racefortheprize.com, $20 for February, $250 for the season, donate to me, and guess what? I'll put that money in my son's savings account or take him to McDonald's, whatever bills need to be paid. I really, truly appreciate your support. We got the Clash, the Duels, the Daytona races, the Atlanta races coming up this month. And simply all you got to do is PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, send the money over. I start sharing the sheets, probably do some behind the scenes, subscriber only AI labs this year. A lot of stuff I'm going to try out, explore, learn together, work together, but work together mainly doing picks. I'm not going to make you do the data scraping. As I said earlier, someone has belittled me saying all he does is scrape data and get spreadsheets. Anyone can do this themselves. Don't pay him. Yeah, Don't support my poor child. No, support my child and save yourself some time. Anyone could make a pizza, but you still order pizza. Enjoy your pizza. You don't need to make a spreadsheet. Just let me do it for you. Be my guest, be our guest, put our service to the test. I got to learn the rest of that song. So that's the JGR rundown. I don't think as we close out the podcast, I want to go too much further into that because we don't know who the crew chiefs are. We have a good idea of Sawolich's background, and he should be fine. You can put him into the category with Eckes, unless for whatever reason these JGR Toyotas are just super fast. I don't really see that coming. I know he is a Toyota development driver, and maybe he's the next guy, next big thing. Well, we'll see. And we don't know who's going to be in this 19 car from week to week. And we do know who Brandon Jones is. Coming back for another stint at JGR. Working with another crew chief. Working with another team. Even when he's had consistency, the only consistency is his inconsistency. He's just not a good race car driver. I think we've all reached the point, and some of you were never rooting for him in the first place, that you just kind of given up on this. Not kid, on this grandpa. He's been around so long. He still does look very young, so give that to him. Drinking from the fountain of youth. But it is about time for Jones, like Austin Dillon, to move into the family business. About time for Jones to be a Reen CEO. But until that day comes, Jones is going to be out there. And not that we are jonesing for Jones, but he's going to be out there just ready to kill our DFS lineups. Thanks for joining me. We didn't cover too much, but I like keeping these on the shorter end. When we come back, we'll hit Austin Hill in the 21. Talk about Andy Street moving away. Chad Haney coming in. Chad Haney, 30 years in the business, never been a crew chief. So that's interesting. We'll get into that one in the next Fantasy NASCAR podcast. Make sure you go to Race4thePrize.com. Check out the spreadsheet. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Trip the lights. Fantastic.